You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears have gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to a family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
I am no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Unity Spiritual Center of Spokane, where we are all about our mission of transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in our world. My name is Darlene Walsh-Martin, and I'll be your platform assistant today. If everyone could please take a moment and silence your cell phones, it would be very much appreciated. As always, we want to begin our time together by sharing our opening affirmation. I will say it once, and then I will ask you to repeat it with me. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. Together, there is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. This is Unity's foundation principle: one presence, one power, one life, living through and as each one of us. This morning, we will be hearing from our transformational speaker, Jeff Tawney, and his message entitled, Everything is Spiritual. Jeff will also be leading us in today's meditation. And now it's time for some news you can use by Hank Brookling.
Good morning, blessed spiritual family. I just want you to all acknowledge what a gift it is to be part of a spiritual family. In these times especially, where we each gather together, we're headed on a similar path, we can support each other, enjoy each other, be in the love and light that we are together. And that's what Unity Spiritual Center is about, all of us joined together. It didn't fog up when I was sitting down there, I'm going to take them off. Anyway, logistics of the COVID virus. So anyway, I'm so grateful you're all here. We had a wonderful service last week for Easter. Those of you who were here, it was just wonderful. Gigi was back, a former minister here, and it was just delightful. And we have a good turnout again this morning. I want to encourage those of you at home to get out of your recliners, get off your couch, and come on in. We've got plenty of room, and the energy is just wonderful. I had to quiet people down before we started the service because they were having such a good time. And it can be that way for you too at home. So please come and join us again. I'd appreciate that. Now on to news you can use. One of the things we're doing again as a fundraiser right now is a clothing drive. And so if you have gently used clothes that you would like to donate, you can bring them in, just put them in a bag or something, and you can just leave them in the entryway out here. There's like an airspace there. And we'll bring them in and we'll take care of them. We're doing this to the end of the month. So please bring any clothes that you would like to give, you'd like somebody else to have a second chance at. Next Sunday, we have our transformational speaker, and it will be Amber McKenzie, our own administrator, who, by the way, is doing an incredible job with building this place up and bringing in wonderful energy and things. Anyway, she's a wonderful speaker. If you haven't heard her talk before, you want to come here. Her talk is entitled The Lord's Prayer, Unlocking Its Transformational Power. So I grew up in Christianity. It was a big thing for me. We hardly say it anymore, but I think it's a wonderful thing to kind of renew on us. And then the following Sunday, on April 25th, we'll have Karen Dunmore, and she will share her message, which at this moment is titled Mysticism, Magic, and an Expanding Universe. She's currently taking a class with Ken Wilbur, a 35-day class each day, and she's going to be sharing things from that class and wonderful perspectives. Those things are all important to me, both mysticism, magic is the power of love to me, and an expanding universe. And then finally, our reflections, observations, and inspiration Zoom call will be directly after services today, and Jeff Tawney, our speaker today, will be joining the call. So there's the number up there on the screen. punch that in and go to zoom.us and put the number in, you'll be right in there. And you can join him and ask him questions. When I spoke a month or so ago, it was really nice to have people and get good feedback, and I was able to answer questions. It was just a really good time. So I ask you all to do that too. And with that, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Jeff Tawney. Jeff was born and raised in the Central Valley of California, and he has spent most of his 40-year professional life in the wireless industry. Jeff is the proud father of 2 children and 4 amazing grandchildren. He relocated to Spokane 2.5 years ago to be close to his son, who had contracted a life-threatening autoimmune disease that at the time rendered him paralyzed. Jeff loves to serve and has volunteered in a variety of roles at his previous church, including as a men's ministry director, men's mentor, and a worship leader. He loves the outdoors and says that despite the circumstances that brought him here, he has loved every minute of it and is proud to call Spokane Unity his spiritual home. Jeff will be sharing more of his story with us today, right now, in his talk entitled, Everything is Spiritual. And now, as they used to say on Johnny Carson, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Hank. Well, you can't do a talk that talks about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz without wearing some ruby red. So let me just see. There's no place like home. Hey, it works! Thank you. I'm humbled. This has been a talk that's been about 10 years in the making for me. And I'm so happy to have my son here. Like the Wizard of Oz, my journey has been just paved with experiences and characters. And, you know, just as Dorothy was on her journey and she had all kinds of twists and turns and characters and life lessons and things that she learned that impacted her life, that has been my experience. I've always been one that's been very relational. It's gone against the grain a lot of times with people, even people in my family who said, I should be like this. And my dad and I butted heads all the time because he wanted me to chase the dollar and climb the corporate ladder. And I was like, that's just not me. That's just not who I am. And it took me a long time to get to the point to where I could really embrace that is the essence of who I am. That's my authentic self. The true purpose of my talk today is to do nothing more than encourage you on your spiritual path and your spiritual journey. On my journey, and I'll talk about this, and that song that we played at the very beginning is my anthem. And I'll talk more about that. But that song, every time I hear it, gives me chills because of what it represents. We are coming out of, thank God, coming out of a time where everything has been made political. And I want to declare that everything is spiritual. Everything that we do in our life has a spiritual impact, right? So, anyways, and if we pay close attention, we can see that. I will confess that I started, the original topic of this talk was, well, I should say the summation of this talk was, how I went from an ultra-conservative, right-wing Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, evangelical, to an inclusive, inward-thinking, self-awareness, non-religious, open-minded, higher self-seeking self. Or seeking human being. But I thought that might be divisive, and I didn't really like saying all that because, but I will say that, and I've told this to people that have gotten to know me, it's like, if you knew me 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have liked me. We probably wouldn't have been in the same tribe, and I see my tribe down here, these close friends of mine, and Chincy over here, who's been one of my friends since I moved here. If you had known me then, we probably would not have been friends because we wouldn't have had a lot in common. I was very, well, I look back and I just don't even like myself then. But it's part of the journey, and it's part of coming to a place where you can appreciate who you are today and the life lessons, the scarecrow and the tin man and all that kind of thing that is behind us. The problem that we've had is when we see everything as political, then we see people as voting blocks, or we see them as ways of people that we can either accept or we can dismiss. Not long ago, I was at work and I was meeting a customer, and he was asking some questions about his service, and I was trying to explain to him why it was the way it was. And he steps and he looks at me and he goes, "You're defending that. You must be a Democrat." And I step back and I'm like, "No, sir, I'm just trying to explain to you how all this works." And I went a little bit further, and then he said, as he reaches for the door, he says, "You're a socialist." And I'm like, "No, I'm not a socialist." Why do we have to paint people and put them in a box in order to be able to relate to them? We all carry a bias. We carry this bias within us in which we see things. And then we measure, we look at people through that bias. It's natural. It's something that we've learned over years. But the challenge is to ourselves is do we stay there, or do we keep pressing through that bias and learn a different way and learn to see things a different way? Our ability to see is not unlike our ability to hear. We have to remove all the noise and the distractions that can sharpen our senses. I don't know about you. I don't notice it here in Spokane so much as I did in California. But it would not be uncommon to be driving in California and you'd be stopped at a stoplight and you hear somebody about 4 or 5 cars away, and they've got the car stereo up and it's booming, and all you hear is that boom, boom, boom. And there were times where I was like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could just like hit a button and turn it off because it was so annoying." And it occurred to me, like, when you are operating in that place, the thing that you're doing is you're putting off an annoying that drives people away from you, right? Go to next one. There we go. So let me just first start off and talk a little bit about myself. There's my family, my mom, my sister and I. My mom passed away when I was 18, cancer. My dad, a few years ago. My daughter and her family, Brittany, in Colorado. Of course, my son. And just recently, within the last couple of weeks, our newest addition, Olivia Grace. And yeah, I'm very proud of my family. But it hasn't been an easy road. My mom was a Christian. We were born and raised within the church. My dad, I would say, was probably agnostic. He would describe his religion as a foxhole religion. He was kind of from the military, and he would basically kind of come out of it and come out of his foxhole for a while and then go back into it. And it just kind of was a circumstantial thing for him. I just remember going to church a lot and Dad staying home. When my parents divorced, my mom, we kind of got engaged into a evangelical church, and that became the basis of my my upbringing and everything. You were it was a Christian, Bible centered. Everything that you learned was in the Bible, and if it wasn't in the Bible or from the pastor, then it was suspect. Couldn't be true. You couldn't have your own thoughts. You couldn't have your own ideas, or you couldn't have your own inspirations from God, right? So I think that so many limitations are placed on the Christian experience because of that it's either got to be in the Bible or it's got to be coming from the pulpit. It discourages opportunities to seek spirit and find God in everyday things in life, which is where the real interaction happens. For the longest time, I always felt like I was hearing God. And in previous situations, church, relationships, people would always, if I said something like, "Oh, I was out walking and I felt like God was saying this," they'd kind of look at you like, "No, God doesn't talk to everyday people," right? And I started going to a small home church and there was a young lady there by the name of Trina. In fact, I just talked to her yesterday because I wanted to celebrate the impact she had on my life. But Trina would come to church and she would say, like, I had this dream, or I was walking and God said this and I said that. And I was just amazed that she was so comfortable in her communication with God, and it was so authentic and it was so real, right? And I thought, I have that, but yet I've been kind of trained or groomed or grown up to be suspect of it. Like, is it really that, or am I just kind of nuts and hearing voices, or what is really going on? So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of a collection of those experiences and those lessons that got me to the place of, from that place to who I am today and who I continue to kind of grow to be. I'm not saying by any means that I have it all together, because I don't. I make mistakes and learn, each and every day. But it is, I'm learning to live and listen to that voice. My mom died when I was 18. My grandfather, my mom died of cancer when I was 18. My grandfather died of cancer. I lost my firstborn daughter when she was 5 days old. I had an uncle and an aunt on both sides of my family that died of cancer. All that to say that changes the way that you look at life. And those were the tornadoes in my life. And my word for this year is trajectory, right? Because a trajectory is like, if you've played golf or anything, or you kicked a ball, or you've bowled, you know that, the angle in which something starts is much greater at the finish, right? And so you wonder, like, how did the ball get way over there when I just barely let it go here? So trajectory has a lot of things to do in your life. But in my mind, I've always kind of like looked at life like the things that happen in our life like an equalizer or like a soundboard. Caleb, I'm sure, likes this picture here, because these are all things that are affecting the way that we're coming across, the way people are hearing us. And it also is a way that we are hearing other people, because we're hearing them in those filters and everything. One of the things that happened when my mom passed away is, the church surrounded us, and I remember having prayer sessions at home, people surrounding my mom's bed, praying for healing, and I was told, your mom's going to be healed, your mom's going to be healed. You got to believe your mom's going to be healed. And I even got into a big fight with my dad one night, because he's like, your mom is not going to recover from this. She is dying. And I was like, nope, she's not going to die. The last 3 days of her life, I couldn't see her, because I just couldn't bear the idea that God would fail me. It created questions in my life about my faith in God and who God was, to the point that I started questioning people, and the answers I got was, well, maybe your mom had unconfessed sin in her life. Maybe you've got unconfessed sin in your life, and God isn't hearing your prayers. Man, you talk about a burden. And when my first daughter was born, and to have that and still be looking at God and faith through that lens. My sister's daughter, 30 days after she was born, had a appendix burst, and Marissa passed away. And I thought, okay, my firstborn, my sister's firstborn, what is this? Like, God, how can this happen? And I grew up with the idea of like, okay, I'm not going to grow resentful, I'm not going to grow bitter, but you've got some explaining to do when I see you. I want answers. I want to know why this is happening. So I had a lot of questions about my faith. In reading the book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements, one of the things that I learned was that my experiences become my reality become my truth. We make agreements with ourselves based on these truths, and these agreements become the basis in which we develop a strategy in our life. So, when I read that, and I recognized that with all the death and all the cancer in my life and all the stuff that had happened, I reconciled that I was probably not going to see age 50. And I was like, okay, I'm good with that. It's like, what can I do about it? Can't do anything about it. I can live my life in fear, or I can just like go with the idea, with the understanding, like, I'm not going to see retirement, so why live my life as if I'm going to retire? I didn't make like stupid decisions, but I certainly didn't like make good smart ones that said, hey, what are you going to do when you're 70 years old, kind of a thing. So all my beliefs and all the decisions and things like that I made were all based on that strategy, right? But understanding trajectory, and you wonder how you get there, the whole concept or the idea is that we make these agreements with ourselves, but the agreements are based on a false narrative. They're based on false information. So the beginning of my transformation was question everything. I created boundaries in my friendships, some good, some bad. This individual was my boss. This is Shelley. And sometimes when I talk about Shelley, kind of look at me like, Shelley? Like, what was Shelley in your life? Shelley hired me in the wireless industry back in the day when we were Cellular One. And she was my boss, became my mentor. And as years passed, I always looked to Shelley as a mother figure. But if she was sitting here today, she would say, no, I'm not old enough to be your mom. I'm your older sister. I was like, whatever that is. But one of the things that I learned, one of the first lessons I learned with Shelley, was we disagreed on two things. And whenever we got together every other week for lunch or coffee or whatever, there were two things that we would never discuss because they would get in the way of our friendship: politics and religion. Right? In today's time, those are like the two most volatile things. People can't even have relationships or conversations because of those things. But Shelley and I modeled, unknowingly at this point, modeled this thing of like, we care about one another more than we care about those subjects, to get in the way of our relationship, to get in the way of who we are. And so we decided we continued to have this relationship. And when she died, I won't go into the story, I'll save that for another day, but the day she died, I had an epiphany that changed my life. And I called and left her a message that I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. This just happened. Only to find out that morning she had had a brain aneurysm and was in the hospital, and it was never to talk to her again. But I have felt since that day that Shelley has been by my side, guiding me through this whole journey. And it's the greatest gift I've ever received. I went through some troubles and trials. I started working with a life coach, started working on myself. As I said, I questioned everything. One of the big influence on my life has been a pastor by the name of Rob Bell, if you've heard of him. He's written a book called Love Wins, which I would recommend everybody read. And another book called What is the Bible? Rob's just an amazing guy. That song, as I was talking earlier, No Longer Slaves to Fear, has been an anthem for me, because it's not only just the fear, as I've talked about, like what happened with my family and my kids and all that, and having like this fear of God. It was not just no longer a slave to that fear, but it was also no longer a slave to the fear of religion, the fear of Christianity and what the religion tries to kind of put on you. Now, don't get me wrong, I still consider myself a Christian, but I don't consider myself an evangelical, and I don't consider myself to be part of the religious right or the conservatism, because I feel like it doesn't represent my values, which I'll talk about in a minute. This guy, as I said, I'm relational. This is Lewis, phenomenal painter. The guy can do anything. This was I won't get into that. Essence of time. One day in my time of prayer meditation, I was meditating on the scripture, the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him. And I remember, okay, God, what does that mean? Suitable helper. What does that look like? Certainly doesn't look like marriage for me. So about next day, I think it was, Lewis calls me up and he says, hey, Jeff, he says, I'm kind of going through a slow time. I'm wondering if you can lend me some money. I was like, Lewis, I got a better deal for you. I need help. I got a job I'm finishing up in Madeira. I got to hang cabinet doors. How about you come and help me on that job and I'll pay you? He's like, well, I don't know anything about hanging doors or tools. I don't have any tools. I go, Lewis, don't worry about it. I got everything we need. All I need is you to come help me out. Okay, I'll be there. So we get there, and as I normally do, I go through the house and I explain. I was a contractor for 14 years. And I go through the house and I'm explaining, okay, this is a job. We're going to hang these doors, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm going through the whole thing, the whole process. And Lewis says, okay, I got it. So I get on the ladder and I'm grabbing doors and I'm grabbing hinges. And the lady just had her house painted. She had Oprah Winfrey on the TV. And there was plenty of things to distract Lewis from what we were doing. But Lewis, engaged fully into the job. And the job was, we're hanging cabinet doors. So no longer, as we got 2 or 3 into it, I was no longer having to ask, I need this door, I need that hinge, I drop a screw. He was on it. We get to the end of the whole thing. I mean, we were like a well-oiled machine by the end of that day. We get in the car, and Lewis, love this man, just such a sweet spirit. He's like, well, how did I do? And at that moment, I felt God say, that's the suitable helper. And I said, Lewis, not only did you help me, but you taught me a lesson. God used you today in this circumstance. And it wasn't so much, the way I liken it is like this. It wasn't so much that I was the head and he was the helper. It was more like, I gave you the vision, I gave you the responsibility to do the job, and I'm giving you someone that's going to work with you in doing that job. Right? He could have said, well, when do I get to be on the ladder? When do I get to hold a tool? When do I get to do this? When do I get to that? Questioning everything, right? He wasn't. He was like, this is my role. I'm helping you out. Let's get this done. And if the roles were reversed and we were painting, I would have been doing the same thing for him. I'd have been like, okay, what do I use? Blue tape and paint thinner and all that sort of thing. So the valuable lesson to me was that God came up, he showed up. And I've found it in my life when I've asked God for an answer, I get one. Another thing that I went through was realizing the importance of values. It has been my experience that many people confuse the concept of morals versus values. Many people believe that because they are moral, that they know one another's values. But I think that's a very rare occasion. I think people think because they're moral, they have the values, and then they think, oh, well, we believe the same thing, and let's get married, and the next thing you know, it's like you start realizing that your values don't match up with one another. And values are much more important than the morals. If you have the right values, the morals will follow. Without values, we're just spinning tops, making their way around the table, and every bump or obstacle interrupts our flow and propels us in a different direction. We've just finishing a book called Be Water, My Friends. And one of the essence of the book is that as water flows and it reaches an obstacle, it flows around it. It finds a way around the obstacle and it keeps flowing. It maybe sometime it may pause, but it will keep moving and it keeps flowing. And so the idea is to kind of keep ourselves in the flow. For me, when I was confused and never really thought about my values, I made very bad decisions. But I was loyal to my tribe. So all that to say was poor values, poor decisions. The relationship. The relationship I've come to understand with God it's a circle. It's a dance. Richard Rohr calls it the divine dance. I think it was the first Sunday I came to this church, and Jane got up and she spoke, and she quoted Richard Rohr. And if somebody could say, here's a cup of coffee, here's a donut, you are home, that moment was that place. It's like, oh my gosh, she reads Richard Rohr. She's quoting Richard Rohr. He's like somebody I've been following for years. And so it's like that, just that whole thing. But Richard Rohr describes it as a divine dance. It's not a hierarchy, as I was come to learn or think of, like God at the head and Holy Spirit and Jesus and all that. It's like, no, this painting is very important to me. It's called the Trinity. And what the painting represents is the thing in the middle, most people think is a chalice, but it's not. It's a mirror. And the object of this painting is an invitation to sit at the table with Spirit, with God, with Jesus, and to hold the mirror up to your face and have the opportunity to see yourself as they see you. Jesus came to show us it was just as simple as love God, love people. That's all it's about. I was in a men's study a few years ago, and one of the gentlemen stood up on a chair. His topic was the Holy Spirit. And he got up on a chair, and he had 2 pieces of wood. And he took those 2 pieces of wood, and he put them in a cross, and he's like looking at us like this. And he says, the Holy Spirit uses the crosshairs of the cross to look into our lives. I almost vomited. I wanted to stand up. I was so frustrated because I know that's not true. So he allowed, we were sitting at tables, and he's like, okay, now amongst your tables, I want you to sit and talk about what we've discussed. Fortunately, I was on the last chair of that go-round, and everybody, each guy was like, oh, I feel so bad, and knowing God looks at me, and and all the things that I've done, and I'm wretched, and blah, 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 blah. And the next guy comes to me, it's like, I'm such a disappointment to my kids, and I haven't been a good example, and I was like, came my turn, and I said, Bill, let me ask you something. Do you love your daughter? It's like, well, of course I love my daughter. I said, you love your daughter with all your heart? Well, yeah. I said, is there anything your daughter could do that would cause you to fall out of love for her? No. Nothing? No. How about if she embezzled money or robbed a bank? No. What if she came home and told you she was gay? No. I would still love her. And I said, and that's how God sees us. He may be disappointed in some of the decisions we make, but he doesn't fall out of love with us. Nor would you fall out of love with your child. Even if your child just did something you just made you still love them. You still want to offer a relationship. You still want that relationship with them. Boy, I got so many hits on this morning, even in my meditation time. So, see these paintings? We all see love differently, and we see love differently through the things that we've learned and the skills that we've grown to master. From the book Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz, he says, when we make an agreement with ourselves on what it looks like to be loved, then we subconsciously create those situations so that we will feel loved. Or if we believed we are not worthy of fighting for, we will create situations that prove our truth to be right, even if those situations don't really mean love. So at a time, I went to one of those painting nights, and I was with somebody that was really struggling with relationships, and she was like, I don't know that I could ever love again, and she had a bad marriage and all kinds of stuff, and she was just fighting this whole thing, and it involved painting and wine, and we're all into it, right? And there was like 6 of us that went to this paint night, and we get done painting, and she's like, yeah, I don't want this, and she was going to throw it in the trash, and I was like, no, you created this. Like, this was done with your hand. How can you just throw it away? I said, I'll take it. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks later when I was looking at the paintings, and I thought to myself, we are all looking at the same thing. We are all looking at the same image. It's the same example to emulate what it means to love. The challenge is that we're all have different skills and abilities and the way that we see things, right? So we're both painting, but they look different. They don't, and the beauty of it is they don't have to look the same, because it's part of our creativity and part of the energy that we bring to this, right? And even though what she painted doesn't look identical to that, doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means that it's part of what she is creating through that imagery. If we need something to exhibit love to someone else, then it's not love. Thomas Merton wrote, "The beginning of love is the will to let those we love be perfectly themselves, the resolution not to twist them to fit into our own image. In loving them, we do not love what In loving them, we do not love what they are, but we only love their potential likeness to ourselves. Then we do not love them. We only love the reflection of ourselves that we find in them." Isn't that great? This morning I was reading Richard Rohr, and I just wanted to quote something here. It popped out at me. But he was talking about friendship, and he was talking about authentic friendship. And he says, if you have never experienced such human love or friendship, it will be very hard for you to access God as love. If you have never let God love you, you will not know how to love humanly in the deepest way. You give a piece of yourself to another. You see a piece of yourself in the other. This allows the other to do the same in return. You do not need or demand anything back from them because you know that you are both participating. This is why it is crucial to allow God and at least one other trusted person to see us in our imperfection and even our nakedness as we are, rather than as we would ideally wish to be. It is also why we must give others the same experience of being looked upon in their imperfection. Otherwise, they will never know the essential transformative mystery of grace. Friendships. Two men could not be polar opposites of one another. The one on the right side there is Milo Martin. At a time in my life, as he described it, he picked me off the floor as a broken egg and was just an amazing Christian man. He is in Fresno. Milo passed a few years ago. He was a legend in the Christian circles in Fresno. Man would go into the prisons, and wasn't any time, and I'm as God is my witness, there wasn't a time we wouldn't be out for coffee or lunch that some man wouldn't come up and go, "Are you Milo Martin?" "Yeah." And Milo, "Yeah." And he's like, "I just want to thank you because you came to the chapel at the Fresno jail and prayed with me." And Milo would just kind of bow his head and just, "Well, thank you." The other man is Ray Fisher, who I got to know very late. Ray was also a legend in Fresno. He was a pharmacist, and the stories go about Ray that it wouldn't be his family. I'm very good friends with his family, and the family would say, it wouldn't be unlike my dad to hear the garage door open at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. This was back in the day before Walgreens and all that. Wouldn't be unlike 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to hear the garage door open and my dad getting up and going to the pharmacy to get medication, put a medication together, a prescription together for someone who was just getting released from the hospital. Amazing, amazing man. Ray was wounded very early in life in a church. And I had the opportunity to be with him when we had the memorial service for his wife when she passed away. And I got Ray. Me and Ray were tight. And Ray and I went to the church. I got permission from the family to share this. So Ray and I are at the church, and it was the first time he'd ever been in that church. His wife was a stall mate in that church for 40, 50 years, but he had never set foot in that church. And we're sitting there, and we're sitting kind of behind the pulpit, and He said, yeah, I've never been here. And I could tell he was uneasy. And I was like, well, what's going through your mind? He's like, the only time I've ever been in a church was when Ruth Jean invited me to a youth group. And he says, family never grew up in church, so I decided, yeah, why not? So he went. And he said, the youth guy, whoever guy was leading the group, decided to make me an example. And so at 14 years old, he was asked questions about God. He had no clue. And I said, how did that make you feel, Ray? And he says, about that small. He said, after that, I had nothing to do with church or religion or God. Nothing. No interest. This man, as I said, owned his own pharmacy, put 3 of his drivers through college. There was a store, much like the general store here in Spokane. There's a store in Fresno called Fresno Ag. It's the place to go. If every place doesn't have the part, Fresno Ag has it. Everything in Ray's house had a Fresno Ag sticker on it, price tag. The man loved Fresno Ag. And so I jokingly would say, hey, Ray, I got to go to Fresno Ag. And then I started calling to church. Hey, I said, I got to go to church and pick up some bolts. Do you need anything? Yeah, but I'll go with you. We would go. Ray knew everybody, knew their story, knew their name. When he passed away, we were like family. I was with friends, very dear friends with the family. He lived across the street. And they're like, well, we don't know what to do. I go, why don't we have his memorial service at Fresno Ag? That was his church. So we approached Fresno Ag, and they were like, yeah, that's a great idea. They cleaned out all the barbecue section, and we had church for Ray right there in Fresno Ag. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. The next thing, I remember sitting over here a couple months ago, and I think it was Richard, said something about pulling weeds. And that's when I knew I need to talk. Because it's like, said something about, yeah, it's like, you don't want to pull weeds. Who wants to pull weeds? And I thought, oh man, have I got a story. This is another one of those spiritual lessons where I was asking God, show me truth. What does truth look like? What is truth? So one day, instead of getting the Roundup and spreading, I decided to get on my hands and knees and start pulling weeds. And in California, you have this Bermuda grass, and weeds get caught up in it. Long story short, I'm on my knees pulling weeds for about an hour. And then I realized, like, you can actually reach beneath Bermuda, and you can tell by feeling the roots what's a weed and what's Bermuda. And the thing about pulling weeds is if you get it by the root, you basically have taken care of it. A few days later, I had the hit with the pulling weeds. And it was, if you know what truth is, you'll know what's truth and what's not truth. You'll know what to grab onto and what to let go of. It was such a beautiful lesson in the way that, that Spirit connects things. Another thing, pulling a wiggle room. This is my joking thing about wiggle room. Sometimes you just have to give people wiggle room. I was digging out a rose stump, and did you know that if you're digging out a rose stump this big, you have to dig a hole this big? You know why? It's got a taproot that you can't see from the top. And you have to give that plant wiggle room to allow the root ball to get over far enough to where you can hit that taproot and release that bush. A couple of days later, I was going through a difficult relationship, trying to figure out what to do. And God said, you need to give that person wiggle room. You need to allow them some space to allow the taproot to get exposed so that they can let go. I was like, wow, I'm getting chills now. That's so crazy, God. Like, how do you do that? And, it's nuts. Another thing I've come to believe here recently, and I'll be honest with you, when I first stepped into Unity, there were some things that's like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if I can really, does that really fit? And I realized, it's like buying shoes. You get a pair of old shoes, they're very comfortable, you just keep wearing them. All you want to do is resole them, but you don't ever want to get rid of them because they're too comfortable to let go. When you put on a new pair of shoes, it takes some time to kind of get used to them, for them to stretch and be able to be comfortable enough for you to fit. Sometimes they're not comfortable at all and take them back. And that's okay. But it's like things that we come to learn, right? Sometimes it doesn't really sit well. I don't know if I'm warming up to it. Sometimes you just have to think of it like a pair of shoes. You just kind of have to try it on and see how it fits and how it works. One of the quotes I love is a quote by Howard Thurman, and this has been the next chapter in my life. Dr. Howard Thurman said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who can come alive. And that's where, for me, that is where we have come to this place. And this place being the community of opportunities. If anything has demonstrated itself to us in the last 4 or 5 years, is that you've got people out there, you've got flocks of people, and there are people that are so into the center that the only thing they see, their only vision, is the butt in front of them. That's the only thing they see. That's their tribe, and they can't get out of that. They're stuck. The opportunity for us, the opportunity for those of us that are aware and have the ability to communicate and to come alongside people, is for the people that are on the outside going, I don't know that I want to be in that flock. I don't know that's where I want to be. Those are the opportunities and the conversations that we need to have with our community, with our tribe, with our family. We need to find those ways of being able to get inside. Jack Hanna recently some news was about him, and he had a quote that said, "You have to touch the heart to touch the mind." And I thought, that's exactly right. We have to learn how to be one to another before we can actually speak to other people. We have to come alongside them. You can try to have a confrontation with somebody and tell them that you're right. What I used to do when I was back in the day, I would just shout at you. But that doesn't gain anything. We need to come alongside one another, build rapport, build relationships, and earn the right to speak into one another's lives, right? We need to tap into the higher self that we have. People are drawn to compassion, kindness, and inclusion. And so I say, friends, that the opportunities that we have are for those people that are kind of on the fringe or in the weeds. In closing, I would like to say these are my B's. And as I wrote this, I thought B's have a very vital role in our lives, in our community, right? They are responsible for, they are very intentional about their message of pollen and planting it. And when they do that, what they do is it becomes fruitful. So these are the B's. These are my B's. A, be relevant. No matter how much you want to escape or ignore the events of the day, keep yourself informed on the happenings enough that you can engage in conversations. Be in the moment. No matter where you are, who you are with, or what you are doing, keep your attention present in the moment. For some of us, this is something I've learned. Like when I go to the grocery store and I'm standing in line and I'm waiting, my first reaction is to pull up my phone, right? No, I put my phone in my pocket and I look, find out what the person's name is, and have that people love to hear their name. So find an opportunity to just make a connection, because you're not going to do it. The opportunities are right in front of us. Be curious. You know, Jesus talked a lot about the innocence and how of children. And I think the reason for that is to be childlike is to have the innocence to wonder and to question everything. Be alert. When we are alert, we are paying attention, engaged, and expectant. Be love. Love, let that be your lifelong adventure, is learning what love is. Be the change. As Mahatma Gandhi famously said, be the change that you want to see. Be the blessing. What can you do for somebody else? and be a listener. Be an encourager. Remember that everything is spiritual. And with that, I say thank you. So we're going to do something a little different for meditation. We're going to take a journey. So what I want you all to do is I want you to take a couple of deep breaths, close your eyes, feel the back of the chair supporting you. Feel the bottom of the chair supporting you. This is your home place. I'm going to tell you a story. And while the story was first told in ancient times, it is as relevant today as it was then. So we are going to transport ourselves back to the ancient times of Christ. You were wearing the clothing of that day, loose flowing garments, leather sandals, a scarf, maybe a head cover. You feel your feet firmly planted on the ground. Wiggle your toes. Do you feel your feet in the leather sandals? Can you sense the soil in your toes? Can you smell the blossoms and feel the breeze? The warmth of the sun on your face? You look out and you see the fields. Maybe you're one of those working in the fields. Maybe you're collecting water, chopping wood, or just going about the normal chores of the day. Can you hear the sheep in the fields? Maybe a sheep bell ringing in the distance. Birds chirping, singing their songs of joy. Are you there? Today seems like just another day. The man you work with stands quietly observing his people at work, just as he's done for the last 3 years. Yes, he's keeping a watchful eye in the distance. You wonder what he must be thinking. His son having left home those years ago to find fortune and adventure. Every day you see your master's sadness. You see the longing for his son. Every day you wondered what this young son must be doing. Is he safe? Will he return? Will you ever see him again? You see the sadness on your master's face, yet today seems different. All of a sudden you see the man's eyes widen. He sees an outline in the distance. His eyes strain to make out the shape walking in his direction. Suddenly he drops his staff and he makes a run for the distant image. Wait, the man in the distance is running too. Can it be? It's his son. Yes, it's his son. You stop what you're doing and you watch the events unfold. The two men run to one another, and just as the son reaches his father, he falls to his knees and cries out. You can't make out that what the son is saying over his hysteria, but his voice is full of pain. You know that cry, shameful cries of a disheartened man. Yet the father's response is quite different. He's elated. He's so happy. His tears and cry are not of pain or disappointment, but joy, complete joy. He grabs his son by the shoulders. You hear the father say, "Stand up, my son, stand up." father pulls a sobbing young man into his gaze. The father kisses the young man's face. Tears of joy and shame are mixed, as you can tell, one from the other. Now you hear the father shout out commands to all he can hear. Grab my best robe. Put the family ring back on his finger. Tonight we celebrate. My son who was lost has now returned. What are your thoughts of this story? Who might you be? Are you an observer watching with curiosity and wonder? Are you the father elated over the restoration of the relationship with your son? Are you the son, feeling discouraged for the disappointment and shame you feel you've brought to the family? Or maybe you're the older brother. Where are you in this story? You see, one man represents pride, shame, and disappointment. One man represents jealousy and justice. And the third man represents mercy, gratitude, and forgiveness. What are your emotions during this story? Are you filled with joy? Are you filled with anger? Are you filled with contempt? Or are you filled with mercy and gratitude? Maybe there's a prodigal in your life. Maybe there's one who's returned and you know what that father is feeling. Maybe there's a prodigal and you know the contempt and the resentment the older brother is feeling. Can you let it go? Is this an opportunity for you to let go and forgive? Can you project mercy and gratitude? Can you accept forgiveness and grace? Maybe there's a prodigal in your life that hasn't returned yet. Can you lean into that hope? Can you lean into the desire for the restoration of a relationship? Can you give thanks even if your time has not yet come? Be mercy. Be grace. Be the blessing. Now take a deep breath. Open your eyes and rise up.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round. You can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we're gonna walk it out. Move mountains, we gonna walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. I know you feel like dying, but I promise you will take the world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountains, and I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other, and we will rise, we will rise, we will rise, oh, we'll rise. And I'll rise up, rise like the day, I'll rise up. In spite of the ache, I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, high like the waves, we'll rise up. In spite of the ache, we'll rise up. And we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you.
So we started out with recognizing fear, and we went on to knowing that we are children of God. And knowing those things, and we move on to that it's all spiritual, and that everything, what we like and what we don't like, is all spiritual. And then we move into the challenge of rising up and being who we have come here to be. So thank you all for being on this journey. So here we are in this place where we can have these kinds of experiences and be in unity, knowing that unity stands for peace in the presence of conflict, for love in the presence of hatred, for forgiveness in the presence of injury. Unity honors the many names for God, the many paths to God, for we know there is only one power, one presence, one life. So whoever you are and wherever you are on your path, wherever you are in this spiritual journey of transformation, you are welcome here. If you are new to our ministry and are interested in learning more about our upcoming transformational speakers, our workshops, our events, please sign up for our email newsletter by texting Unity Spokane to the number 22828, or sign up on our website at unityspokane.org. We would also like to connect with you on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And also you can just search at Unity Spiritual Center, Spokane, to find us. So let's take a moment to acknowledge and bless one another with a socially distanced namaste greeting. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or you're at home, please feel free to stand up if you're able and send your consciousness, your conscious loving energy to those around you. Now is our time to celebrate abundance together as we share our gifts and our love offerings. For those of you who feel the divine call to financially support our ministry today, you can drop your offering in the box at the bank, at the back of, at the bank, yeah. Go to the bank and then come back here. So in the sanctuary. So another option is to text GIVE to 253-528-7416 or visit our website, unityspokane.org, and click the donate button at the top. Please know that your giving means so much to the vitality of our ministry, and thank you for your continued support. With that in mind, let's take a moment now to sink into our hearts and bring forth a feeling of gratitude and generosity as we say together our love offering blessing. I know that my giving blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give and receive. I give thanks for the abundance that is mine to share. So our chaplains today are Steve Bortfeld and Diane Hunter, who are holding the service and all of us and our virtual community in prayer. So thank you, Steve and Diane, for your service today. We would like to encourage anyone who has a need for prayer support to please submit your prayer request through our online form. Simply go to unityspokane.org and click on the Contact Us button on the main page. You'll be taken to a request form, and names are added to our prayer list and are prayed over for 30 days by both our prayer ministry as well as Silent Unity. So now let us join together for our closing prayer for protection, followed by the peace song. Together we affirm, the light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And that's the truth.
With
thank you all for coming, and we ask you just to file out, and it's a great day to visit in the parking lot. Nice and sunny. Thank you all.
Got you down.